I'm delighted to welcome and introduce the first talk of this event. It's been called AI and the Post-Work World. And I'm thrilled to introduce our first speaker, who I think is one of the greatest guides we could ask for on this subject. Formerly president of Google China, Kai-Fu Lee is now chairman and CEO of Sinovation Ventures and president of Sinovation Ventures Artificial Intelligence Institute. He was previously a senior executive at Microsoft, SGI, and Apple. He is author of the New York Times bestseller AI Powers, China, Silicon Valley, and the New World Order. And he co-chairs the Artificial Intelligence Council for the World Economic Forum's Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So as I say, I don't think anyone more equipped to guide us through the subject. So thank you very much indeed for joining us, and Kai-Fu, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful conference. I'm going to show you some slides. My talk is on AI and the post-work world. So we've all been reading all these headlines about AI, beating the world champion in Go, beating human doctors in different types of diagnosis, and now generating text in any number of possible content almost at human level, and most recently AlphaFold, solving the 50-year-old grand challenge of protein folding. So all of these breakthroughs are based on a set of machine learning technologies, also known as deep learning. And the way deep learning works is that it's not like science fiction, where AI emulates and does everything humans do, but rather in particular narrow domains with large enough training data, AI can learn to perform much, much higher than humans. So this capability, sometimes called artificial narrow intelligence, is not at all narrow, because think about it. How many tasks can we do if we can take data and make smart decisions, classifications, and predictions? This is how Google, Facebook, Amazon intelligently know what we want to see, what we want to buy, by optimizing what's known as objective function. Facebook maximizes how much time we spend on their content. Amazon maximizes how much money we spend. And similarly, this can be applied to many, many other domains, such as financial, retail, manufacturing, and the list goes on. In my book, AI Superpowers, I outlined the 4 waves of AI. And the first wave is as applied to internet applications. Second wave, pretty much any business that has data can use AI to optimize its business decision making. The third wave is when AI gains eyes and ears and can perceive and recognize object and speech and language. And beyond that, AI can even sense heat, reconstruct 3D, and understand motion, humidity, using all kinds of sensors that humans cannot. So again, superhuman performance. And at wave 4 is when AI has hands and feet and can move and manipulate, moving into robotics, autonomous vehicles, and drones. So you can see under each of these 4 waves, AI is going to disrupt and change all of the industries under these waves, because for each of these industries, there are many routine tasks where AI can perform better than people at essentially zero incremental costs. So undoubtedly, AI will create huge amount of value, estimated at $12 to $16 trillion in the next 9 years by institutions like McKinsey and the PwC. And much of that value is basically doing routine tasks that can free up human to do other things, but honestly, it's also replacing people on tasks that are routine, that can be trained with data. And there are a lot of tasks that are routine. All of us do some tasks that are routine. So what are the jobs AI can and cannot replace? What should we do to mitigate this? What's the future of work in an AI-driven economy? And how should we imagine and reimagine our future? These are the topics that I will cover today. So I've talked about using AI to replace our eyes. Well, computer vision is a branch of AI that is doing exactly that. For example, here we see pictures of AI replacing people to do apparel quality assurance, motor assembly, and mobile phone inspection. And you can also see an example where AI can do the job of a radiologist, checking for lung cancer or MRIs for COVID. So very much doing work that people are doing today. AI is replacing human hands and feet. Over time, robotics will be used in agriculture and factories to replace our manual labor, our blue-collar work. And the robotic hands you see here are very nimble. One example shows that it's precise enough to pick up an egg yolk. And autonomous vehicles are beginning to roam warehouses, factories, farms. And in China, in my apartment building, all of my packages and food are delivered by robots. And many restaurants we go to, the waiters are robotic. They don't look like humans. They're not humanoid robots. They're merely trays on wheels that move to your table where you can take things and put it on your table and eat it. These are particularly accelerated because of COVID in order to minimize human contact. And another example you see on this page is the use of robotics for laboratory work. So suddenly you can work in hazardous environments without having to have people. You can have predictable results because robotics are very precise in terms of doing experiments. Next, we see AI replacing human brains. This is not to worry too much. AI doesn't do analytical thinking, strategy, creativity, but a lot of our brain is doing routine and repetitive work. So here we see automated trading, back office, AI chatbot replacing customer service and even sales and telemarketing and telesales. And we also see a final example on the lower right, an autonomous driving, which replaces something that uses our brains, eyes, hands, and feet. So we probably think usually that job displacements are about blue-collar work, but that's not true. Let me tell you about a product technology called robotic process automation. RPA is a software robot that's installed on people's machines, our PCs. And as people do their work, RPA is watching. So let's say you're someone who does expense report processing or approvals in the back office, then it's watching you do work. And as it figures out what you might do next, it would say, oh, I know you're going to send an email to your boss for approval. Yes? And you click yes, and it writes the email for you. Kind of like the way Gmail does autocomplete, right? So you think, wow, this is really smart, thank you. But what you don't know is when it aggregates so much learning from many workers in your company, it will send a report that says, I've learned how to do 30% of the work of this type of work. And the company will naturally let go of 30% of the people, outsourcing the work to the RPA and let people do the 70%. And gradually, RPA will do more and more of the work, creating in exactly job displacement. As an example, if a company might take RPA first and use it in its recruiting department, first RPA will do email communications, interview setup, feedback coordination. Later, it will be smart enough after gathering more data to do hiring decision-making and even offer negotiation. And after that, AI can do interview screening. A company in the US called HireVue does that. And after recruiting department does all that, lets go of people, then the HR department says, hey, we can do training, employee orientation, performance evaluation. Then after HR replaces a lot of people with AI, departments like finance, legal, sales, marketing will follow. So what this tells us is AI can replace routine work. A lot of our work is routine. And this type of AI displacement of routine work is gradual, will take time, but eventually it is also total. So to give you an example, this slide shows you a graph of how truly repetitive jobs are replaced in 5 years, routine jobs in 10, optimizing jobs in 15, ultimately seems to only leave complex jobs and creative jobs, of which there are few in society. So this seems to suggest we have a significant problem, as many of the jobs will disappear gradually, incrementally, but eventually totally. Think about what this means for a family of four. If you're a paralegal, your job may be under threat within 5 years. If you're a research analyst, you need to start thinking about your skills and prospects in more like five years or 7 years. For your 4-year-old, how will his or her education change? And if you have a 1-year-old, what will happen to his or her future when he or she graduates from university? So let's come back and see what we can do. The best way to understand the solution is to figure out what AI cannot do. AI cannot create, conceptualize, or plan strategically. While AI is very good for optimizing for a narrow objective, that objective is chosen by a person. AI cannot choose its own objectives, goals, or think creatively. Nor does AI have any common sense or ability to think across domains. AI cannot feel or interact with feelings like empathy, compassion, human trust. And that means AI cannot make another person feel understood and cared for. And even if AI improves in this area, humans are not ready to accept robotic replacements for these human touch services anytime soon. And finally, for blue-collar work, AI cannot yet accomplish complex physical work that requires a high degree of dexterity, precise hand-eye coordination, or dealing with unstructured or unknown environments. So actually, the situation is not that bad. It's not a one-dimensional picture of utter obliteration of human jobs. We have actually 3 dimensions to think about. One is like the creativity dimension. Another is the compassion, human touch kind of dimension. And the third is a dexterity and unstructured environment direction. Rather than showing a 3-dimensional graph, let's take a look at the white-collar job displacements by just adding the compassionate jobs. And now we have a y-axis showing how much compassion is needed. And we see these jobs are in 3 different quadrants. And what's interesting is that there is actually a 4th quadrant that we can fill out. Jobs that may not require a high degree of creativity or strategy, but really need that human touch. And these are jobs like wedding planner, elderly caretaker, remote tutor, concierge, social worker. And actually these jobs will grow in number. In health services, there will be on the order of several million more jobs in the next 5 years, according to the World Health Organization. Healthcare services are increasing as people are living longer and wanting a higher quality of living. And also there are a number of jobs that are currently volunteer jobs, such as a hotline volunteer, elderly companion, or a homeschool teacher, the parents that is. Imagine how these jobs will grow in number as routine jobs in the lower left-hand side are gradually replaced because they were low compassion and low creativity. I think many of the jobs can migrate to the upper left quadrant. So in thinking about these 4 quadrants, here's how jobs will evolve. The lower left quadrant with low compassion, low creativity will be replaced by artificial intelligence. The lower right quadrant is one where it's high creativity and not as much compassion needed, such as a scientist. That's a wonderful job for an AI tool to help a scientist discover more drugs more efficiently, thereby providing great value, a symbiotic combination of AI and humans. And in the jobs of upper left, we could still have AI analysis with human warmth. For example, a nurse might use AI analysis to give advice to patients, but it is that nurse's human warmth that gives the patient a feeling of human connection and greater, more optimism in the outlook of recovery. And of course, on the upper right, jobs that require creativity and compassion, that's where humans shine, but that's also human plus AI can be a symbiosis. So we can see that in the lower right, there's a big replacement issue. It is also a large number of jobs, but all 3 other quadrants, there are opportunities for human and AI symbiosis. So to embrace these four quadrants, what we can do is the following. We have to imagine, reimagine our future within an AI economy where AI can do routine tasks better than people. And I call this the 3R strategy. Relearn, learn new skills for the AI economy. Recalibrate, develop human AI symbiosis with new tools. And Renaissance. This amounts to a huge rethinking of how we will live and work. Let's take a look at each one of them. First, relearn. That's the process of helping people displaced from unskilled, routine, and quantitative jobs to learn new skills. People in endangered jobs will need to receive retraining. We have to relook at vocational schools. They need to redesign their curricula to reduce courses for doomed jobs and increase courses for sustainable jobs. For example, auto repair will probably not last a lot longer. Plumber will last much longer because buildings are not going to be revamped very quickly. But the bartender is a job that seems routine, but actually has a lot of human connection, so it will probably stay with us for a long time, maybe forever. Robots are not going to be used for that, even though they can do the physical job, but it's the connection that matters. And I think governments will need to take the lead and provide incentives and subsidies for these courses. Of course, corporations can also do that. Amazon is providing a career choice program, providing $12,000 for 4 years for training for jobs like nurses and aeronautic repair. The cornerstone of the new economy will be human-powered jobs. This will be the largest in numbers, such as nursing, elderly care, etc. Our economy really desperately need more people in these categories. And in the same category are a lot of roles carried out by volunteers that could become full-time. And these are all roles where the human element of the service is vital. Again, think about the job of an engaging bartender interacting with his or her customers. Secondly, recalibrate. We need to recalibrate today's jobs. Across many professions, human creativity will be augmented with AI tools. These tools are just like tools that were used by professionals as PCs emerged. Can you imagine a journalist not using Word? Can you imagine a photographer not using Photoshop? So these tools will be something like AI-based molecule generation program for drug researchers, and AI advertising planner for marketers, and AI fact checker for journalists. Have faith that these tools will emerge, and when they do, be the first to embrace, because it will actually give you a competitive advantage. And this will provide a human-machine symbiosis where AI will take care of quantitative analysis and humans can take care of areas that require warmth and compassion. We can see that, for example, the future doctor will still be the primary point of contact, trusted by the patient, but the doctor will rely on AI diagnostic tools, which is better at determining the best treatment. This will reinvent the doctor's job into more of a compassionate caregiver, giving patients more time with their doctors. These types of doctors will also require less training. They will make less money, but they will provide more warmth and help patients to a faster recovery. We also cannot predict right now what other human-machine symbiosis jobs there will be, just as 20 years ago, we could not have predicted the role of an Uber driver today. That really became possible thanks to the internet. So it'll be interesting to see what other jobs AI and other technologies create. Finally, we can expect AI renaissance, celebrating our creativity, compassion, and humanity. Just as the wealthy Florentine merchants who brought birth to the Renaissance by funding it, AI will generate tremendous wealth, which can pay for everyone to have a respectable living with dignity, perhaps using universal basic income. And also with more freedom and time, people will be able to follow their passion, creativity, and talents. Painters, sculptors, photographers will be able to use AI tools to compose, experiment, and enumerate and refine their work. Novelists, journalists, and poets will use new technologies that will take their writing in previously unthought of directions. Educators will improve their ability to teach by using AI to do the analysis. So AI renaissance will really reinvent many of these industries. They will perhaps also reinvent the service industry to really deliver joy. These 3 R's constitute an unprecedented undertaking for humanity. We will have a lot of hard work to do, as is listed here. We will need to embrace a more diverse spectrum of work-life balance. We will need to think about a new social contract, about our contributions, and many of these ideas can be taken from existing parts of the world, the service industry in Switzerland and Japan, and many, many other examples. So we need to share our experiences globally. So to conclude, I really think AI is presenting some challenges, but it also presents us with a huge opportunity if we embrace the 3 R's. And this is hard, but we are fortunate to be the generation that will inherit unprecedented wealth from AI. So we must also bear the responsibility to rewrite the social contract and reorient our economies and ourselves. And I believe if we as humanity look back 30 years from now, we will all see that AI will have liberated us from routine work and push us into thinking what it is that makes us human. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed. We don't have too much time, just a couple of minutes, but actually the questions that have come in really asked. I mean, somebody was asking about the future of entertainment, film, cinema, and music, which I think you very recently covered, how AI and fits into human entertainment. Do you have anything else to say to that matter, how it fits into film, cinema?
Yes, I think in the future, the advancement of AI that can generate language, and you've all seen about deep fake used in the bad ways, but it can also be used to generate characters in movies. Combined with virtual reality, we can imagine in the future where we can put on glasses, go to a different world, interact with a lot of people. Some are real, some are synthesized in scripts that are partly written by people and partly written by machines. The future of entertainment will be immersive, exciting, natural. The only thing I worry about is it may be too addictive for some of us.
And again, you've answered, somebody was asking about what jobs would be left for humans to do, but I think as your talk went on, you very much talked about what jobs there would be left. I might ask if you, it's a little bit of a task to ask in under a minute, but somebody was saying the future is a bit bleak for jobs where a lack of compassion and empathy excels.
Well, the future of jobs will celebrate people who have compassion and empathy, and I think one could also argue that as we use more and more machines, we might lose that. So that's all the more important for this to be the day of reckoning, that we realize that with machines taking away the routine work, for us to really have control of our future, we have to realize that this is the opportunity we have to embrace compassion and empathy, because that's something AI cannot do. And if we think about why it is that we became humans living on Earth today, it cannot be because of the routine work. It is about our creativity on the one hand and our compassion and empathy on the other hand. I think that's what will differentiate us from machines and AI in the future.
Thank you very, very much. It's absolutely fascinating hearing from you, and thank you all for joining. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.